My name is Celeste, and I am 28 years old. After building my career as a graphic designer in New York, a recession forced me back to my childhood home in San Francisco. I agreed to pay my parents $1,800 monthly for my old bedroom, which seemed reasonable until last month. That's when my brother Justin showed up with his wife and toddler son, and my parents decided they needed my space more than I did, even though I was the only one paying rent. Where are you watching from today? Drop it in the comments. Hit subscribe and stay tuned to see how I finally stood up to my family after this betrayal. I never thought I would move back home at 28. For 5 years, I had built a successful career as a graphic designer in New York City. My portfolio included work for several well-known fashion brands and a few tech startups. I had my own apartment in Brooklyn, a solid group of friends, and enough savings to feel secure. Then the recession hit, and suddenly companies were cutting their marketing budgets first. My main contract wasn't renewed, and 3 of my regular clients paused all external design work. Within 2 months, my comfortable life had crumbled. I applied for dozens of positions, but the market was flooded with talented designers all competing for the same dwindling pool of jobs. My savings were depleting rapidly, and New York rent waits for no one. After much deliberation and many tearful nights, I made the difficult decision to temporarily move back to my parents' home in San Francisco while I regrouped. My childhood home sits in one of the more expensive neighborhoods in San Francisco. It's a beautiful 3-bedroom Victorian with bay windows and a small garden that my mother tends with religious devotion. My parents, Harold and Diana, have lived there for 30 years, gradually renovating it as their careers prospered. My father is an accountant, and my mother works as a high school principal. When I called to ask if I could move back temporarily, their response was welcoming, but came with unexpected conditions. "Of course you can come home, sweetheart," my mother had said. "But you know housing costs in San Francisco are outrageous these days. We think it would be fair if you contributed to the household expenses." I understood their perspective. I was an adult after all. But what shocked me was the amount they proposed. "We've looked at what rooms in our neighborhood rent for," my father explained during a video call spreadsheet open on his screen. $1,800 a month seems reasonable. That includes utilities and internet. I nearly choked. "That's almost what I was paying in Brooklyn." "Exactly," he nodded. "San Francisco is expensive. We're actually giving you a slight discount compared to market rate." I felt a complex mix of emotions. On one hand, I understood housing in San Francisco was ridiculously expensive. On the other hand, these were my parents, not landlords. But pride and independence had been instilled in me from an early age. If this was the arrangement they were comfortable with, I would make it work. "We'll draw up a proper rental agreement," my father continued in his accountant voice. "3-month initial term, then month to month. You'll have full use of your old bedroom and the common areas of the house." I agreed, and 2 weeks later arrived with my suitcases and essential design equipment. My childhood bedroom felt smaller than I remembered, its pale blue walls still adorned with a few old band posters I never took down. Over the next week, I transformed the space into a functional home office. I purchased a proper desk ergonomic chair and set up my dual monitors and drawing tablet by the window for natural light. I organized my clothes efficiently in the small closet and placed my books neatly on the existing shelves. My relationship with my parents had always been respectful but somewhat formal. They had high expectations and had raised me to be independent and achievement-oriented. Our family didn't do much physical affection or emotional expression. During dinner, conversation typically centered on practical matters or current events rather than feelings or personal struggles. Despite the unusual living arrangement, I settled into a routine. I would work from my room during the day, join my parents for dinner most evenings, and help with household chores on weekends. I paid my rent promptly on the first of each month, transferring the money to my father's account as specified in our agreement. Meanwhile, I focused on rebuilding my career. I reached out to my network, updated my portfolio, and began taking on freelance projects. The work wasn't as steady as before, but gradually I started gaining new clients. My parents respected my work hours and gave me the space I needed, though occasionally my mother would knock with a cup of tea or to ask a quick question about her phone or computer. By the third month, I felt I was getting back on track. I had established a growing base of freelance clients, was making enough to cover my expenses, and even putting a small amount into savings again. While living with my parents wasn't ideal, I was grateful for the stability it provided during this transitional period. I estimated that within 6 to 8 months, I would have enough saved to move into my own place again. Little did I know that my carefully reconstructed stability was about to be completely upended by an unexpected family crisis. The phone rang at 11:30 on a Tuesday night. I was still up working on a deadline for a new client, a boutique skincare brand needing packaging designs by morning. When I saw my brother's name on the screen, my first thought was that something terrible had happened. Justin rarely called, and never this late. "Justin, is everything okay?" I answered, immediately concerned. "Hey, Celeste," he said, his voice strained. "Not really. The building we're living in just got sold to some developer. All tenants have 30 days to vacate. They're tearing the whole place down." "That's awful," I said, genuinely sympathetic, despite my complicated relationship with my brother. "Do you have someplace to go?" "That's kind of why I'm calling," he said, his voice taking on the slightly wheedling tone I recognized from childhood. "I was hoping maybe Mom and Dad might let us crash there for a bit while we figure things out. But I wanted to check with you first, since you're staying there too." Justin and I had always had a somewhat competitive relationship growing up. 2 years younger than me, he had been the more socially outgoing sibling involved in bands and theater, while I was the studious artistic one. Our parents had treated us differently, holding me to higher standards, while seeming to accept Justin's more carefree approach to life. It wasn't that they didn't love us both, but the expectations placed on us had never felt equal. After high school, Justin had pursued his dream of becoming a musician, moving between bands and occasional bartending jobs. 3 years ago, he had married Megan, a kindergarten teacher he met at one of his shows. Their son Lucas was now almost 2 years old, an energetic toddler I'd only met twice at family gatherings. "I mean, it's not really my place to say who can stay at Mom and Dad's," I replied carefully. "Have you talked to them about it?" "Not yet. I wanted to make sure it wouldn't cause problems with you first." This consideration surprised me. Maybe parenthood had matured him. "I appreciate that. I don't see why it would be an issue for a short time. The house has 3 bedrooms, so you guys could take the guest room." "Thanks, sis. I'll call them tomorrow. And hopefully we'll find a new place quickly." After hanging up, I felt uneasy, but couldn't pinpoint why. Perhaps it was just the disruption to the routine I'd carefully established. Or maybe it was the memories of growing up with Justin, always feeling like I needed to be the responsible one, while he charmed his way through life's challenges. 2 days later, my parents invited us both to dinner to discuss the situation. Justin, Megan, and little Lucas arrived first. Lucas toddled around the living room, examining everything with curious fingers, while Megan vigilantly followed to prevent disasters. Justin helped our father grill on the back patio, their laughter drifting through the open windows. During dinner, my mother officially announced what I already knew. "We've decided that Justin, Megan, and Lucas will stay with us temporarily while they look for a new apartment," she said, serving the salad. "Family helps family during difficult times." "That's really generous of you," I said, cutting my chicken into small pieces. "The guest room is a bit small, but I'm sure you can make it work for a short time." An awkward silence fell over the table. My parents exchanged glances. "Actually," my father said slowly, "the guest room has become more of a storage space since you moved out. Your mother's been using it for her quilting supplies, and my exercise equipment is in there too." "We were thinking," my mother continued, not quite meeting my eyes, "that since your room is the largest bedroom besides ours, and you're just one person." My fork froze midway to my mouth. "Wait, are you suggesting they stay in my room? Where would I sleep?" "We thought you could all share the space," my father said, "just until they find a new place. The room is certainly big enough for everyone if we rearrange things a bit." I looked at Justin, who suddenly seemed very interested in helping Lucas with his food. Megan at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. "I've converted that room into my office," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "I'm running my business from there. All my equipment is set up." "We understand that," my mother nodded. "And we're sure you can all work out an arrangement that respects everyone's needs." The conversation moved on to how long Justin and his family might need to stay and their plans for apartment hunting. I remained quiet, processing what had just been proposed. I was paying $1,800 a month for a room that my parents now wanted me to share, with 3 additional people, including a toddler. But they had framed it in a way that made it difficult to object without seeming selfish. After dinner, as everyone moved to the living room for coffee, I pulled my mother aside in the kitchen. Mom, I understand wanting to help Justin, but I'm concerned about sharing my workspace. I have client calls and deadlines. A 2-year-old in the room would make that impossible. She patted my arm. You've always been so adaptable, Celeste. I'm sure you'll figure it out. It's just temporary. Later that evening, as I was loading the dishwasher, I overheard my parents talking in their bedroom, the door not quite closed. Do you think she suspects anything? My father asked. I don't think so, my mother replied. We'll need to break the news gently once they're moved in. She's not going to be happy. She'll understand eventually. Family comes first. I quietly backed away from their door, my stomach knotting with anxiety. What news were they planning to break gently to me? The situation already felt uncomfortable, but now I suspected there was more they weren't telling me. 3 days later, I returned home from a coffee meeting with a potential client to find chaos in the entryway. Suitcases, boxes, and bags were piled near the stairs, and I could hear Lucas wailing somewhere inside the house. Following the sound, I walked into my bedroom and froze in the doorway. My carefully arranged workspace had been pushed against one wall. A portable crib now stood where my reading chair had been. Justin was assembling what looked like a small dresser, while Megan tried to calm Lucas, who was red-faced and screaming. What's happening? I asked, though the answer was painfully obvious. Oh, Celeste. Megan looked up, bouncing Lucas on her hip. Your parents said we could start moving in today. I hope that's okay. Before I could respond, my parents appeared behind me. Celeste, good timing, my father said cheerfully, as if nothing unusual was happening. We can use your help bringing in the rest of their things. I turned to face them, keeping my voice low. Can we talk for a moment privately? In the kitchen, I struggled to remain calm as I faced my parents across the island counter. You told me they would be sharing my room. You never said anything about rearranging my entire workspace without asking me or them, moving in literally on top of my things. My mother's expression was sympathetic but firm. Sweetheart, they have a lot of belongings, especially with Lucas. They need the space. And what about my needs? I'm running a business from that room. I have client calls, deadlines. How am I supposed to work with a toddler in the room? Family helps family, my father said, using the phrase that was quickly becoming my least favorite in the English language. You're just one person, they're 3. I understand that, but I'm paying $1,800 a month for that room, full market rate as you reminded me when I moved in. My parents exchanged another one of those glances that made my stomach tighten. About that, my father said slowly. We were hoping you'd understand that the situation has changed. We can't exactly charge you the same amount if you're sharing the space. For a moment, relief washed over me. At least they recognized the arrangement was unfair. That makes sense. What were you thinking would be fair? Half the original amount. Another exchanged glance. Actually, my mother said, we thought the arrangement should stay the same. You're still getting housing in one of the most expensive cities in the country, and now you have the added benefit of spending time with your nephew. I stared at them in disbelief. You expect me to continue paying $1,800 a month while sharing my space with 3 people, one of whom is a toddler. When you put it like that, it sounds so transactional. My mother frowned. We're a family, Celeste. Justin's family is in crisis. They lost their home. Would you really make this about money at a time like this? The guilt trip was expertly deployed, hitting me exactly where it hurt. Had I become so cold and calculating that I couldn't help my own brother in his time of need? But something still felt profoundly unfair about the situation. I'm not trying to be difficult, I said carefully. I want to help Justin and his family, but this arrangement impacts my ability to work and my privacy. I think it's reasonable to discuss adjusting the rent to reflect that. We can talk about it later, my father said in a tone that suggested the topic was closed for now. Right now, let's focus on getting them settled in. They've had a stressful few days. I retreated to the bathroom, the only private space left to me, and sat on the edge of the bathtub. Taking deep breaths, I tried to process what was happening. The unfairness stung, but I reminded myself that this was supposed to be temporary. I could endure some discomfort if it meant helping my brother's family through a difficult time. That night, I discovered just how challenging the new arrangement would be. My twin bed remained pushed against one wall, while a queen-sized air mattress for Justin and Megan took up much of the remaining floor space. Lucas's portable crib stood at the foot of my bed. My desk and equipment remained functional, but now cramped into a corner. After a chaotic dinner where Lucas threw most of his food on the floor, and Justin and Megan argued about his bath routine, I attempted to work on my project. With headphones on, I could mostly block out the sounds of Lucas's bedtime routine, but the constant movement in my peripheral vision made concentration nearly impossible. When I finally tried to sleep around midnight, Lucas woke up crying twice before 2 a.m. Each time, Megan would get up to soothe him, whispering apologies to me as she moved around the darkened room. The next morning, bleary-eyed from lack of sleep, I confronted my parents again, while Justin's family was still upstairs. "This isn't going to work," I said bluntly. "I can't sleep, I can't work. I'm not asking them to leave, but we need to find a different arrangement. And I think it's only fair that my rent is reduced while I'm sharing the space." My mother sipped her coffee. "You've always been so independent, Celeste. It's admirable, but sometimes it makes you a bit rigid. Families adapt, families share. When I was growing up, I shared a bedroom with both my sisters." "This isn't about sharing," I insisted. "It's about fairness. I'm paying rent as if I have a private room, which I don't anymore." "We're not running a hotel with prorated rooms," my father said dismissively. "The agreement was for housing, which you still have, under completely different conditions. If you're really struggling with the arrangement," my mother said, her tone becoming slightly frosty, "perhaps you should consider accelerating your plans to find your own place." The suggestion felt like a slap. They knew I was still rebuilding financially and wasn't ready to take on San Francisco rent on my own yet. It was as if they were calling my bluff, knowing I had few options. "I'm not trying to be difficult," I said, feeling defeated. "I just want to find a solution that works for everyone." "It will all work out," my father said with finality. "Everyone just needs time to adjust." As I trudged back upstairs to attempt to work, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being taken advantage of, and by my own family, no less. Over the next week, the situation deteriorated further. My workspace became increasingly cramped as Justin and Megan unpacked more of their belongings. Boxes of their things lined the walls, and baby toys seemed to multiply overnight, scattered across every available surface. My work suffered immediately. During an important video call with a potential client, Lucas had a meltdown screaming at the top of his lungs because Megan wouldn't let him play with my drawing tablet. I had to mute myself repeatedly, and the potential client ended the call early, promising to follow up later, in a tone that suggested they wouldn't. I missed 2 deadlines that week, having to email embarrassing apologies to clients. Even when I tried working in coffee shops, the lack of my full setup hampered my productivity. The bathroom became a battleground of competing schedules, with mornings particularly chaotic, as everyone tried to get ready for their day. What bothered me most was watching Justin and Megan gradually take over more space. My belongings were continually shifted, moved, or reorganized to make room for theirs. When I returned from a grocery run one afternoon, I found Megan had moved my clothes to a small section of the closet to make room for their things. "I hope you don't mind," she said apologetically. "We just have so much stuff with Lucas." Through it all, my parents remained firmly on Team Justin. Any concerns I raised were dismissed as me being inflexible or unwilling to help family in need. The week culminated in a Friday family dinner that nearly pushed me over the edge. "So I've got good news and bad news," Justin announced as we ate. "Bad news is 3 apartments we looked at fell through. Good news is I might have a lead on a gig with a new band." "That's wonderful about the band," my mother beamed. "The apartment situation will sort itself out. There's no rush." I carefully set down my fork. "No rush? I thought this was supposed to be temporary." My father gave me a warning look. "It is temporary, but finding affordable housing in this city takes time, as you well know." And about that, Justin continued, looking slightly uncomfortable for the first time. We're a bit tight financially right now with the move and all, so we might not be able to contribute much to the household expenses for a while. I nearly choked on my water. Wait, are you paying rent too? Another one of those loaded glances between my parents. Given their situation, my father said slowly, we thought it would be best if they focused their resources on saving for a new security deposit and first month's rent. The implication was clear. Justin's family was staying rent-free while I continued to pay full price for a room we all shared. So, let me understand this, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. I'm paying $1,800 to share a bedroom with 3 people while they're paying nothing. It's not about the money, Celeste, my mother said sharply. It's about helping family through a crisis. And what about helping me? I'm family too. Your situation is different, my father said. You have a stable income. Justin is between jobs. Between jobs, he's been between jobs for most of his adult life. Justin scowled. Not all of us want to sell our souls to corporations, Celeste. Some of us have artistic integrity. Artistic integrity doesn't pay the bills, I shot back. Or rent, apparently. That's enough, my father said firmly. Celeste, I think you're being unnecessarily difficult about this. Your brother's family lost their home. Have some compassion. I looked around the table at my family's faces. My parents looked disappointed in me. Justin had a hint of smugness behind his concerned expression. Only Megan had the decency to look uncomfortable. I'm going for a walk, I said, throwing my napkin on the table and standing up. I need some air. As I walked around the neighborhood in the cool evening air, my resentment grew. This wasn't about helping family through a crisis anymore. It felt like my parents were once again holding me to a different standard than Justin. Because I was responsible and hardworking, I was expected to sacrifice and pay my way, while his irresponsibility was rewarded with free housing and preferential treatment. When I returned to the house, everyone was in the living room watching a movie. I headed straight upstairs, only to find that in my absence, the room had been rearranged again. My desk had been pushed even further into the corner to accommodate a small play area for Lucas. Sitting on my bed, I opened my laptop and began researching housing options. Even the smallest studios in the worst neighborhoods were well beyond what I could comfortably afford, while still saving to rebuild my emergency fund. The rental market in San Francisco was brutal, especially for a freelancer without guaranteed income. As I scrolled through depressing listing after listing, I overheard a conversation drifting up from below. My parents and Justin were in the kitchen, their voices just audible through the heating vent. We need to talk to Celeste about the sleeping arrangements, my mother was saying. The current setup isn't working well for Lucas. He's not getting enough sleep with all of us in one room. What are you suggesting? That was my father, Justin's voice now. Megan and I were thinking it might be better if Celeste slept on the couch in the living room, just temporarily. That way Lucas could have more quiet and we wouldn't wake Celeste when he gets up during the night. She's not going to like that, my father said. Well, it's not like she's here much anyway, Justin replied. She's always working, and the living room couch is comfortable. I crashed on it for months after college. We'll talk to her tomorrow, my mother decided. I'm sure she'll understand once we explain it's for Lucas's well-being. I sat frozen on my bed laptop, still open to rental listings I couldn't afford. They wanted me to give up my bed and sleep on the living room couch while still paying $1,800 in rent. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. In that moment, something shifted inside me. This wasn't just about an inconvenient living situation anymore. This was about my family fundamentally devaluing me, my work, and my boundaries. And I was done accepting it. The next morning, I was already awake and dressed when my parents knocked on the bedroom door. Justin and Megan had taken Lucas to the park, conveniently absent for what was clearly a planned conversation. Celeste, can we talk to you? My mother asked as they entered. Actually, I wanted to talk to you too, I replied, gesturing to the edge of my bed for them to sit. They exchanged a look before sitting down. We've been thinking about the current arrangement, my father began. It's clear that having everyone in one room is causing some challenges, especially for little Lucas. We were wondering, my mother continued, if you might consider using the living room as your sleeping space. Just temporarily, of course. You could keep your work set up here and use it during the day when Lucas is napping elsewhere or playing downstairs. I looked at them, these people who had raised me to be independent and responsible, now asking me to give up even more, while still paying full price. Let me see if I understand, I said calmly. You want me to sleep on the couch in a common area with no privacy, continue to pay $1,800 in rent, and only use my bedroom, which I'm paying for during certain hours of the day when it's convenient for Justin's family. When you put it like that, it sounds so transactional. My mother frowned. This is about family helping family. Is it? I asked. Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like I'm the only one expected to make sacrifices. I'm the only one paying rent. I'm the only one whose space and privacy are being eroded. And I'm the only one whose work is being disrupted. You've always been independent and successful, Celeste, my mother said. Justin needs more help. His situation is different. Why? Because he chooses to be irresponsible. Because he refuses to get a stable job. That's unfair, my father interjected. Your brother is pursuing his passion. At everyone else's expense, I countered. And what about my passion? My graphic design isn't just a hobby. It's my career, my livelihood. My father scoffed slightly. It's not a real job anyway, not like Justin's artistic passion. You just make pretty pictures for corporations. His dismissal of my entire profession felt like a physical blow. I stared at him, momentarily speechless. Harold, my mother said warningly, but the damage was done. I see, I said finally. So my work doesn't matter, my boundaries don't matter, my financial contribution doesn't matter, because I'm not Justin. That's not what your father meant. My mother tried to smooth over. We're just trying to make this work for everyone. No, you're trying to make it work for Justin at my expense, I corrected her. Just like you've always done. A knock at the door interrupted our conversation. Justin poked his head in, Lucas balanced on his hip. Sorry to interrupt, he said, not looking sorry at all. Lucas needed a diaper change. Did you guys talk about the sleeping arrangement? We were just discussing it, my father said. Cool. Justin nodded. Celeste, I figured you probably wouldn't mind. You're always so accommodating. The smug undertone was unmistakable. Something inside me snapped. Actually, Justin, I do mind. I mind very much. I turned back to my parents. I've been patient. I've tried to be understanding. But this has gone too far. You're asking me to sleep on a couch in a common area while paying full rent for a room I can only use when it's convenient for everyone else. You're being selfish, my father said flatly. Your brother's family needs help. I'm being selfish, I laughed incredulously. I've given up my privacy, my workspace, my sleep, and I'm still paying full rent. How exactly am I the selfish one here? If you can't see past your own needs to help your brother, then maybe we raised you wrong, my mother said, her voice tight with disappointment. Those words cut deeper than any others. I looked at my family, really looked at them, and for the first time saw clearly what was happening. This pattern of favoritism toward Justin, of expecting me to be the responsible one, while enabling his lack of accountability, had been our family dynamic my entire life, and it wasn't going to change. I took a deep breath. I think this conversation is over. I need some time to think. There's nothing to think about, my father said dismissively. Family comes first. Yes, I agreed quietly. Family should come first. All family, not just Justin. As they left, Justin lingered in the doorway. So about the sleeping arrangement. Get out, Justin. He raised his eyebrows. Wow, someone woke up on the wrong side of the bed. A bed you're trying to take from me while I still pay for it. Once alone, I sat on my bed and let the tears come. I felt betrayed not just by the current situation, but by a lifetime of subtle messages that my brother's needs would always outweigh mine, that my responsibility and hard work were expected and taken for granted, while his irresponsibility was enabled and accommodated. I couldn't sleep that night, my mind racing with anger, hurt, and increasingly determination. By morning, I knew what I needed to do. This situation wasn't going to improve. My family had shown me exactly where I stood in their priorities. Now it was time for me to stand up for myself. The next day, I didn't argue with my parents or Justin. I simply said I needed to focus on work and spent most of the day out of the house. But instead of going to a coffee shop, I met with my friend Alicia, who happened to be an attorney specializing in tenant law. "Let me get this straight," Alicia said as we sat in her office. "Your parents charged you market rate rent, had you sign a formal rental agreement, and now they fundamentally changed the terms by moving 3 additional people into your space, while still expecting you to pay the full amount." "Exactly," I confirmed, sliding the rental agreement across her desk. "And now they want me to sleep on the living room couch while continuing to pay for a bedroom." Alicia reviewed the document carefully. "This is actually a pretty standard rental agreement, and based on what you've told me, they're in violation of several provisions, including the one guaranteeing you private use of the bedroom specified." "What are my options?" "Legally, you could withhold rent until they restore your private use of the room, or you could terminate the agreement based on their breach of terms. In California, tenants have significant protections, even in cases where the landlords are family members." I nodded, taking notes on my tablet. "And what about the money I've already paid for a private room that became shared? You could potentially claim a partial refund for the period during which your private use was compromised. The standard would be the difference between what you paid and what a shared room would typically cost." While I had no intention of suing my parents, knowing my legal standing gave me confidence. After leaving Alicia's office, I went to my bank and opened a new account separate from the one my parents knew about. I transferred most of my funds, leaving just enough in the original account to avoid raising immediate suspicions. Next, I contacted every client I had worked with over the past year, updating them on my situation and asking if they had any projects coming up. I emphasized my reliability and quality of work strategically, not mentioning the chaos of my current living situation. By the end of the day, I had secured commitments for 3 new projects, including a substantial branding package for a tech startup. The final stop was to meet with Martin, a client I had been working with consistently for nearly a year. His digital marketing agency had become my most reliable source of income. Over coffee, I explained my housing challenges in professional terms. "That sounds really difficult," Martin said sympathetically. "Actually, I might have a solution. My company owns a small studio apartment we use for visiting consultants. It's nothing fancy, but it's been empty for the past 2 months. We were thinking of listing it for short-term rentals, but if you're interested, we could work out an arrangement. Perhaps a reduced rent in exchange for a certain amount of design work each month." The offer seemed too good to be true. "Are you serious? That would be incredible." "It works for both of us," Martin shrugged. "We get reliable design work and you get affordable housing. The place is in Bernal Heights. Like I said, it's nothing fancy, but it has everything you need. And it's private." By the time I returned home that evening, I had a plan. I would stay calm, continue working, and methodically prepare my exit. I rented a small storage unit, and over the next week, gradually moved my most essential work equipment and personal belongings there when no one was home. I researched the average cost of shared rooms in San Francisco and calculated exactly what I had overpaid based on the changed living conditions. I drafted a detailed letter with Alicia's help outlining the violations of our rental agreement and the amount I believed I was owed. Throughout this process, I maintained a neutral demeanor at home. I didn't argue when Lucas woke me up at 5 a.m., jumping on his parents' air mattress. I didn't complain when my drawing tablet disappeared under a pile of Justin's laundry. I simply focused on my exit strategy. 10 days after my parents asked me to move to the couch, I met with Martin to sign the lease for the studio apartment. The rent was indeed significantly below market rate, in exchange for 20 hours of design work monthly for his agency, an arrangement that benefited us both. That weekend, when Justin took his family to visit Megan's parents for the day I made my move, I had already moved most of my important belongings to the storage unit or the new apartment. Now I packed the remainder of my clothes and personal items, loaded them into my car, and cleaned my workspace completely. When my parents returned from their Saturday errands, they found me in the living room with my 2 remaining suitcases. "What's going on?" my mother asked, eyeing the luggage. "I'm moving out," I said simply. "Moving out? Where, how?" My father looked genuinely shocked, as if the possibility that I might leave had never occurred to him. I found a place. I'm leaving today. But what about your rental agreement? He sputtered. You can't just leave. Actually, I can. I replied calmly, handing him the envelope Alicia had helped me prepare. This explains everything. You breached our agreement when you moved 3 additional people into the space I was paying for privately. According to California tenant law, that gave me the right to terminate our arrangement. My mother looked stricken. Celeste, we're your parents, not some random landlords. This is ridiculous. Is it? You charged me market rate rent. You had me sign a formal agreement. You treated me like a tenant when it suited you, and like a daughter only when you wanted me to make sacrifices. We were helping your brother, my father exclaimed. That's what family does. Yes, you were helping Justin, at my expense, and that's not what family should do. Family should support each other equally, not play favorites. Just then, the front door opened and Justin walked in, returning earlier than expected. What's going on? He asked, taking in the scene. Your sister is abandoning ship, my father said bitterly. Apparently, our housing arrangement wasn't good enough for her. Justin looked genuinely surprised. Wait, you're leaving. Where are you going to go? I found a place, I repeated. And yes, I can afford it. Not that anyone here ever bothered to ask about my financial situation or my needs. You can't just leave, he protested. What about Lucas? He loves having his aunt around. I love him too, but this situation isn't working. You know that. You were literally trying to kick me out of my own bed while I continued paying for it. My parents had opened the envelope and were reading the letter inside, their expressions darkening. This is absurd. My father waved the paper. You're threatening us with legal action. Your own parents. I'm not threatening anything, I clarified. I'm simply stating facts. You violated our agreement. I've calculated a fair adjustment for the rent I overpaid while sharing the space. You can choose to do the right thing or not. After everything we've done for you, my mother said, tears in her eyes, this is how you repay us. The guilt trip might have worked a month ago, but not anymore. What exactly have you done for me? Mom charged me full rent for a room you gave away, dismissed my work, ignored my needs in favor of Justin's. I love you both, but I deserve better than how you've treated me. I picked up my suitcases and headed for the door. You've always been selfish, my father called after me, always thinking only about yourself. I paused at the door and turned back. No, Dad. I've always been the responsible one, the one who followed the rules, the one who was expected to sacrifice. I'm just finally learning that I deserve the same consideration you've always given Justin. As I loaded my suitcases into my car, Justin followed me out. Celeste, come on, don't be like this. We can work something out. There's nothing to work out, Justin. You can have the room all to yourself now. Congratulations. Is this really about the room, or is this about all the stuff from when we were kids? I closed the trunk and faced him. It's about patterns. Mom and Dad have always held me to a different standard than you. They've always expected me to be the responsible one while enabling your choices, and I'm done with it. So you're just going to cut us all off. Over a bedroom. I'm not cutting anyone off, I'm establishing boundaries. There's a difference. As I drove away, I caught a glimpse of my parents watching from the window. Part of me ached at the hurt on their faces, but a stronger part felt an unfamiliar lightness. For the first time in my adult life, I was prioritizing my own well-being over others' expectations. It was terrifying and liberating all at once. My new studio apartment in Bernal Heights was tiny, but entirely mine. At just under 400 square feet, it had a small kitchen area, a bathroom with an actual tub, and a main living space that served as bedroom office and living room combined. The building was older, with charming architectural details, like crown molding and hardwood floors that had seen better days but still had character. During the first week, I focused on making the space functional and comfortable. I purchased a futon that served as both seating and bed, set up my design workstation by the window, with the best natural light, and found creative storage solutions for my belongings. I hung a few art prints and added plants, transforming the small space into something that felt like home. The silence was the most striking change. After weeks of constant noise and interruption, being able to work uninterrupted felt like an incredible luxury. My productivity immediately improved, and I began rebuilding client relationships that had suffered during the chaotic period at my parents' house. My parents called several times during that first week. I let the calls go to voicemail, needing space to process everything that had happened. Their messages ranged from angry accusations about my abandonment of the family to tearful pleas to come home. Justin texted occasionally, his messages alternating between guilt trips and casual invitations to hang out sometime. After 2 weeks of minimal contact, I reached out to a few friends who had been supportive during the whole ordeal. Alicia helped me host a small housewarming gathering, and having trusted friends fill my new space with laughter and conversation helped cement the feeling that I had made the right decision. By the 1 month mark, I had established a comfortable routine. My freelance work was flourishing with Martin's agency, providing a stable base of projects supplemented by other clients. I joined a co-working space for 1 day a week, which helped combat the isolation of working alone and provided networking opportunities. It was around this time that my mother showed up unannounced at my door. I was surprised to see her standing there looking smaller and more uncertain than I could remember. "May I come in?" she asked hesitantly. I nodded, stepping aside to let her enter the small apartment. She looked around, taking in the compact but organized space. "It's nice," she offered. "You've made it very cozy." "Thanks," I said, gesturing for her to sit on the futon while I took the desk chair. "Would you like some tea?" She nodded, and I busied myself with the electric kettle, giving us both a moment to collect our thoughts. "Your father and I have been talking," she began once I handed her the mug of tea, "about everything that happened. We've realized we didn't handle the situation well." I remained silent, waiting for her to continue. "The letter from your attorney friend made us defensive at first," she admitted. "But then we started thinking about how things must have looked from your perspective, charging you full rent while giving Justin's family free housing, asking you to give up your privacy and space while still paying." "It hurt," I said simply. "Not just the practical aspects, but feeling like my needs didn't matter as much as Justin's." She looked down at her tea. "We've always treated you two differently. I see that now. We pushed you to be responsible and independent while we enabled Justin's less practical choices." "You held me to a higher standard," I agreed, "and that shaped me in many ways some good, but it also made me feel like I was less deserving of support or understanding when I needed it." "I'm sorry, Celeste. We never meant to make you feel that way." Her eyes welled with tears. "We were so proud of how capable you always were that we forgot you might need us too." The apology felt genuine, if incomplete. "What about Justin's family? Are they still staying with you?" "Actually, no. They found an apartment last week. Your father helped with the security deposit." She paused. "And we charged them rent for the time they stayed with us. Not much, but something. Your father said it was only fair given what we charged you." That was a surprise. "I'm glad they found a place." "Justin was upset about paying rent retroactively." She smiled slightly. "Said it wasn't what we agreed to. Your father told him agreements change, and that we'd learned that lesson the hard way." We talked for nearly 2 hours. Not everything was resolved, and some wounds were still too fresh to fully heal, but it was a start. When she left, she handed me an envelope. "Your father calculated what you overpaid based on the changed living conditions. It's all there plus a little extra. He said to tell you it's not about the money, it's about acknowledging that we were wrong." Over the next 3 months, my relationship with my family slowly began to rebuild, but on different terms. I visited my parents for dinner occasionally, but maintained my separate living space and the boundaries I had established. Justin and I had a long overdue conversation about our childhood dynamics and how they had shaped our relationship as adults. My business continued to thrive, and by the 6-month mark after moving out, I had saved enough to consider looking for a slightly larger apartment. The arrangement with Martin's company had been beneficial, but I was ready for a place that was truly my own without any professional strings attached. As I reflect on everything that happened, I realized that the crisis with my family painful, as it was forced me to confront patterns that had defined our relationships for decades. By standing up for myself and refusing to accept unfair treatment, I didn't just change my living situation. I changed how I allowed others to treat me. The most profound lesson was learning that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for healthy relationships. Sometimes the strongest love is shown not through endless sacrifice, but through establishing and maintaining boundaries that allow everyone to be respected. Families should support each other, but that support must be balanced and reciprocal, not flowing only in one direction. I still love my parents and brother deeply, but now our relationships are being rebuilt on healthier foundations. And in my own life, I've carried this lesson forward, being more mindful about my own worth and refusing to accept situations that devalue me, whether in personal relationships or professional contexts. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who were taking advantage of your generosity? How did you handle it? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories about navigating complicated family dynamics and learning to value yourself. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's an act of self-respect and ultimately leads to healthier relationships for everyone involved.